Let's all be honest. In college, we all had a group of girls who would go party and we despised them all for it. I know I definitely did. In today's episode, we talked to Kaitlin Martinez, a junior at the University of Arizona, which is famously a party school.
I think the biggest thing that came out of our conversation with Kaitlin was that there's a lot of girl-on-girl hate. You know, like non-sorority girls hating on those in a sorority, or girls who look down on their peers who like to go out.
Yeah, I'd like to retrospectively apologize to my classmates who I talked shit about in college, but we're all bad feminists, right?
Laila.
Don't act like you didn't either, Najira. I knew you in college.
Let's just play back the conversation.
No, wait, I don't want to be the only one to get a bad reputation, especially not on this podcast.
Shayan, when you're editing this, you can just cut Laila off, okay?
No, what the hell? Don't come here.
Do that all over again. That was really awkward. Hi, Kaitlin. Thanks for joining us.
Hi. I'm sorry.
This is going great so far. We're so excited to have you on the show today. Thank you so much for joining us. So today we wanted to talk to you. You're currently attending the University of Arizona. What year are you?
I'm an incoming junior.
Okay, awesome. So the University of Arizona, I have been informed, is a notorious party school. And I've heard that you love partying, but you're also fiercely feminist. So We wanted to kind of talk about that. What exactly, for those of us that don't know, myself included, what exactly is party girl culture?
Well, okay, for me, party girl culture is this idea that people have created around girls specifically who enjoy going out on the weekends or drinking or going clubbing and stuff like that. I think it also comes with these stereotypes. I think they're harmful stereotypes, and it's very hard for girls to break out of these, like, oh, you're such a party girl stereotypes.
So what are those stereotypes?
I would say mainly that there's stereotypes about not taking school seriously, like not really having a direction in life. All you do is to go out and drink. You don't have your priorities set. A lot of the times I think people assume that girls that go out all the time aren't necessarily smart and that they have nothing better to do with their lives type of, I would say that idea.
Mm-hmm. Why do you feel people consider you to be a party girl?
I think probably just because, for one, I go to like a notorious party school. Like every time I tell someone that, oh, I go to U of A, one of the first reactions they have is, oh, like you like to party, don't you? So first that, and then secondly, I was in a sorority. So automatically people are like, oh, you're in a sorority to party. And also because I do enjoy going out. I go out almost every weekend maybe. So based on those notions, people definitely say I'm a party girl.
So it sounds kind of like you're saying that this idea of a party girl culture is more of a construct as opposed to being an actual thing. It's more of an idea that people have of women who partake in, I guess, in this partying, clubbing kind of activity.
Yeah, definitely. Obviously, wherever you go, you're going to find someone that fits that stereotype, or you're going to be able to find someone who does, like whether it's true or whether that's a preconceived idea that you have. But I don't think that it fits a lot of the girls that I know specifically that are labeled as party girls or that I go out with.
Have you felt like you've received any kind of negative attention for being the kind of person who likes to party?
Yes, I do. I definitely think people think lower of girls who like to go out. This past summer, I was talking to a few friends and family and whatever about school and everything and how I was in a sorority, and they were asking me like what it's about or like what I do if I like it. And then they're like, oh, your grades must be terrible. And that's not fair. And they're not. I'm an honors student. Like I'm in the honors college. I can graduate early if I wanted to. And I think it's this harmful labeling that puts these party girls in a box that's very hard to break out of because people have so many preconceived ideas, and it's not fair for someone, or it's not even that it's not fair, but it's hurtful to have someone assume so many things about your life just because you have a few Instagram posts of you going out with your friends. So I think that brings negative attention in that sense. I definitely think people are just judgy in general of party girls, and they don't really give them a chance to break out of that shell. Once you're labeled as a party girl, or any label really, you seem to be stuck there for a while.
How do you deal with those comments?
I just inform people. I think the best way to knock these walls down is to educate. For instance, with the sorority, a lot of my friends were like, oh, like you must have been hazed. And no, actually, they were really kind to me. The whole reason I joined was to get these lifelong friends. And it's not, I'm paying for my friends. I wasn't hazed. I'm not forced to drink. These are girls I genuinely felt a bond with. And then with grades and stuff, I'm like, oh no, there's actually a lot of us that are in the honors college. We motivate each other before we can go out. It's like, oh, you have to finish that paper, like finish it so we can do something fun this weekend. We reward. It's like, I guess you can say it's a reward for ourselves. We keep our priorities in line while being able to also enjoy a different aspect of life that we want to.
So how do you feel like your social life ultimately impacts your feminist views?
At first, I felt it hard to be a feminist and to be a party girl, because it's hard to go out and dress differently and do my hair and makeup and also be scrutinized by other girls because they're saying, oh, you do that for attention. You want the attention from guys. And it's like, no, but it's very different because I do because I want to look good. Like, I love when I feel good about myself. And so in that sense, it makes me feel empowered. And I can see how other people say it's very hypocritical to go out and do all these things and like dress a certain way for guys. And how is that you being a feminist? But I think feminism is a lot about, it is empowering women, and different things empower women differently. So, like, I want to feel good about myself. It's not even I want to feel good about myself so guys hit on me. It's like I want to feel pretty sometimes, and going out is a way to do that for me. Like, I love dancing with my friends, and I love having a good time with my friends, and that empowers me, and that's what feminism is about to me.
I think that makes sense. I mean, for me, it's really discouraging when people feel that there's only one kind of feminism or one way to embody feminism in your actions. I think there are a lot of folks out there who think that being feminist, there are people who really think that being feminist means being man-hating, or it means, that you have to dress a certain way, you have to look a certain way, you have to, constantly be in fight mode, or that the way you look and the way you dress and how you interact with other people has to be within a certain kind of format or form, like I suppose. And so, yeah, I mean, like that whole idea of, if you're dressing up, if you're, putting on your makeup, if you're dressing in a certain way and people assume, you're doing it for men, one, if that's kind of what you want, I kind of feel like that's up to you. No one should use that as a way to kind of bash your feminist views. But even if it is just for yourself, and if it's not for men, if it's just for you, then that's the way you practice your own feminism. You're doing what you want to do and doing what makes you feel good. And I think that it's really problematic that there are those out there who see it as being anti-feminist,
It's also just like harmful, especially when other girls attack girls. And we see it happen so often with going out, and they're like, oh, what a slut. And it's like, it's disappointing to see other girls act that way with other girls, especially when we should be helping each other and not being competition all the time. And I think it's more about accepting different views, and especially what you were saying about like how a lot of people think like feminists are like these one cookie cutter mold, like they all have these characteristics, and it's completely different. Feminism means something different to everyone.
So do you feel, I guess, in that thread that sorority girls and the party girl movements can be feminist?
I do. I've gotten a lot out of being in a sorority. Being in a sorority, I feel like there are a lot of negative ideas around girls in sororities. I think that there does need to be changes to the Greek life, obviously, but I have gotten a lot of benefit out of meeting different girls. For instance, in my sorority, I met a girl who was in a pre-law fraternity, And she introduced me into that, and she was like, hey, you know, like, I know you want to be a lawyer. Maybe this is something you'd be interested in. And it's also, I've made a lot of connections out of it as well. So I think there are a lot more benefits that people don't realize.
I mean, I will attest to kind of being, when I was in college, kind of being judgmental of the notorious party girls on campus, because there was like a known group of like 3 or 4 girls on campus that everyone knew to be the biggest party girls. I mean, we're talking, one of them was extremely wealthy, and so they all would just go out all the time, and it was a known fact that they would cry for their grades. And so I always had this like minor bias against people, or, you know, people who consider themselves to be party girls, because these girls, at least to the rest of the people who were either not party girls or not admitting to be party girls, these other people felt like, oh, these girls had an unfair advantage, like they had an unfair advantage at the grades. So it's interesting to hear your perspective on things, because it's definitely not one that I heard when I was at school a few years ago.
Yeah, I mean, every Greek life system is different, but I mean, at my school specifically, like, for our sorority, we had 4.0 dinners, where if you got a 4.0, they would take you out to a really nice dinner somewhere. And like, we had honor rolls, and we did a raffle. So every time you got an A and you brought it into the chapter, they would enter you in a raffle for like a food gift card or a makeup gift card or an exercise class or anything. There was like a ton of stuff that you could choose from. So it gave me a lot of motivation seeing all these other girls wanting to do well in school. And I was like, oh, this is awesome. Like, these are my type of people.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny. So Laila and I went to the same college, and I feel like my views were actually quite different, because I had a good number of friends who were in our, so we didn't have sororities, we had societies, which are, I mean, I guess in my head I kind of equate them to being sororities on our campus. We went to a women's college, so there were no fraternities on campus, but I had so many friends who were in these societies, and I guess kind of putting faces to, you know, this idea that I had constructed in my head, or kind of gained as I, you know, grew up, in terms of what sororities would be like. It really kind of broke down those stereotypes of kind of what to expect from a sorority, or what to expect from a group.
Do you want to repeat that, Najira?
Sorry, yeah.
Give it a second.
Sorry, I live right next to an airport, and so I have planes that fly overhead once in a while, and
it's a really high-tech studio that we have.
Yes. But what was really, I guess, helpful to me in terms of understanding what a lot of these women were like, is just I had a good number of friends who were in these societies, and, you know, I knew these girls to be brilliant. You know, they're, you know, well-read, well-educated, they're fantastic in their classes, and they still go out. You know, they go out with their friends, they go and they party, they can go out and they can get drunk and they can do whatever, but they're still maintaining good grades, and they're still excelling in their fields. And I guess it was one of those things where I kind of saw, you know, it doesn't really matter whether or not you're in a sorority or society or whatever. There are people who are both within and without who party, but it's almost this kind of unfair attribution that we have, like seeing women who party and women who, I guess, don't kind of fit into that neat box that we like to put women into, and say, oh, well, because they're deviating from this box that we want to put them in, they must be finding another way to do well for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So why do you think that the same standard isn't applied to men?
Because they're men.
Like, do you feel... Well, let me rephrase that question, because I've been told I ask very leading questions. Do you feel the same standard is applied to men? And, you know, if so or if not, then why?
I definitely don't think that the same standards are applied to men in general. first off, fraternities are looked at higher than they are like sororities. If you're in a fraternity, oh, you're networking, you're going to get so many connections out of that. But when I think a lot of people, when they think of, oh, girls in sorority, like, oh, they just like to get drunk and do drugs or something dramatic, you know? So they're definitely not held to the same standard. And fraternities have parties almost every day of the week at my school. They go Tuesday to Saturday, like you can find something any night. And you never hear anything about them and their grades. Like a ton of guys are on probation for grades and you don't hear about that, and they don't make a big deal out of it. They can still have their parties. They do whatever they want and no one judges them for it. And I don't think I have an answer as to why. I would say it's because of the place that we are mentally in society, because women are still breaking through these barriers, but men never really had to break through them. Or if they had, they have already surpassed them. Mm-hmm. So they have no problem going out. They don't get judged for it or anything. And I think, not that I think like that should be the goal for women, but I think that women definitely shouldn't be judged for going out or being judged for being in a sorority or drinking and doing things that guys do with no question.
I think that, kind of going off of what Kaitlin just said in terms of where we are mentally as a society, I think there's that idea of just boys will be boys, you know, and
exactly.
And that is present in that scenario as well. You know, boys will be boys. They're going to go out. They're going to party, and hey, that might affect their grades or it might not, but why does it matter? Boys will be boys. They'll find a way to pick themselves up anyway. You know, they'll still have their resources. They'll still be able to network. They'll still be able to, you know, have their voices heard in the classroom or have their voices heard when they interview for jobs. They'll be fine. They'll be secure. It's okay. You know, it doesn't really matter so much that they're partying. It doesn't matter so much what they do. But like I said, we like to put women into this neater kind of box, and as soon as a woman deviates, there are alarms that go flashing. You know, we're just kind of like, well, what is she doing, and why is she doing that? And if anything bad happens to her, then it's like, oh, it's because she deviated. It's because she's not fitting into that mold that we have. But we don't really have a mold for men anymore. Mm-hmm. At least not in the same way.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And I remember one of the first weeks that I was initiated into my sorority, we had an officer from University of Arizona PD. They came to our house and they talked to us about how to be safe at night coming home from parties, that we should walk home with a friend from the library, that we shouldn't stay out too late. And it's frustrating because I know guys don't get those same talk. They don't have to worry about the same things that girls do. And it's because it's like this idea of when girls go out, it's like, why are you out so late? But guys never hear that. They never get questions that girls do. And it's extremely frustrating.
That's definitely, I think, a case that happens for men and women in families too, because I definitely have seen and heard the same standards applied within my own family and within a lot of families.
Do you feel like you're treated differently as, you know, someone who identifies as Hispanic and as a party girl? Do you feel you're treated differently than those who are white or Caucasian and partying?
I wouldn't say at school I feel like I got treated differently in a party girl sense because I'm Hispanic. I would say like when I'm home it's different. Like my dad is very traditional, like he gets bothered when I'm out past midnight. He'll let me do it, but he also makes it a point to make his his weariness known. So that's when I feel I get treated differently, because I know a lot of girls whose, I don't know, this can vary parent to parent, but I feel like typically Hispanic dads are very overbearing on girls especially. And I've had that my whole life with my dad. Like my brother could always stay out later. He always had a later curfew than me when I was in his grade. And I would always bring that up to him. I was like, that's not fair. And he was like, I know it's not fair, but I'd rather you be safe. And it's frustrating in that sense to try and break that mold even with my dad specifically.
So it's more of an issue that you're seeing within, I guess, the broader Hispanic society as opposed to being something that you're facing at school.
Yeah, I would say so.
It's interesting that you find the same, or people in general find the same paradox within men and women in society. It's like the same thing with TV. Like, you can have the fat, ugly dude marry the hot woman because it's okay, but if it's a fat, ugly woman, she can't marry a hot dude because how dare she? She doesn't deserve that. Wow, that was really mean. So going back to party girl movements, how do you feel that it plays into modern day notions of feminism?
Well, for me personally, I find it very empowering, and I love the fact that I can do things that, like, my grandma couldn't do. She always tells me that. Whenever I come back from school, she's always like, I lived with my mom until I was 25 and I had a curfew at 11 o'clock at night. And I think that it's great that I'm able to go out and come back at 2 o'clock in the morning, and that's okay now. And that's not that it's not looked down upon, but it's not looked down upon on the same level that it was when my grandma or when my mom was growing up. And that excites me because I want to see where this continues, like how much further we can push the line. Not necessarily partying empowers women, but being able to express yourself in that way empowers women. Being able to say, hey, you know what, I want to dress up like this tonight. Hey, you know what, I want to stay in and watch Netflix. I think this party girl culture gives women options. I just think that it creates more outlets for women to express themselves, and I think that's important. And I think that coincides with what we think of, or at least what I think of feminism today. Like, I want to be able to do as many things as I can. And one of those things that I love and enjoy is this idea, I guess, of party girl culture.
Mm-hmm. So what kind of outlets do you want to have open up as a result of this?
I think that me being able to go out and come back as I want, or to be able to do things that my brother does without question, can lead to a more even playing field with men and women. I won't be questioned for why I came home at 2 a.m. or why are you going out on a Tuesday or why are you drinking. It won't be so taboo for women. That's what I hope it creates.
That's definitely something I think that we should all strive for, even though I personally go to sleep at like 12, so I haven't stuck it. Fighting to be seen as a party girl, but I know that it's like a hot topic of debate right now. Mm-hmm. So what are your thoughts on, on the nudity movement and on the free the nipple movement? I guess that's what they what people have coined it as these days.
I live for the free the nipple movement. Like, I just think that it's one of those things where it's like, if you choose not to express yourself that way, if you don't want your body to see that way, that's fine, and that's completely your choice, and you should be able to make that choice. But I also think that Miley Cyrus shouldn't be completely demolished by media because she went to a beach topless. Like, I don't think it should be that big of a deal. And I think that having these movements to desexualize girls' bodies are very important.
Do you feel that the desexualization of women's bodies will ever be something that is reached?
I don't think in the near future that it will be reached. Like, I hope that we can come to that one day, but right now the way the movement is going and how much opposition there is, and I think there's a lot of girls that take it differently as well, and I think that there needs to be a more united front on that before we can make a lot of progress to getting to that goal of desexualizing a woman's body.
I was just thinking before, it always struck me as odd in terms of what we see as inappropriate, in terms of like, how you dress in public and whether or not that's something that, people can call the cops and be like, this is, I don't know I can't recall the actual term for it right now, but I guess an inappropriate display of skin, I guess nudity. What would actually
exposure.
Indecent exposure. There you go. That's the term. If a guy can walk around topless, why do we actually have a different definition of what indecent exposure is? Do we actually have that written out somewhere that, this is this is what classifies as indecent exposure for men. This is what classifies as indecent exposure for women. Who makes up these rules, and is that something that we as a society can now move to change, right? And it's something that has come up not necessarily in terms of just, if a woman just wants to go out, without wearing any top, but just, for mothers who want to breastfeed in public, and the kind of movement there to be able to do so because of the number of women who have been told, whether they're outside in a park or they're in a restaurant, they're in, an area where they're exposed to the public, if they're being told that they're not allowed to do that, they're not allowed to feed their child because that's considered indecent exposure. So I guess it's always kind of struck me as odd that we actually have this, this rule of what decent or indecent exposure is, but there's actually a separation by gender, or I guess separation by body part, and what's being shown.
Honestly, I think it's fascinating how a mom feeding her baby is considered abhorrent and against society, but then you have wet t-shirt contests and porn on Instagram, and porn stars on Instagram who are perfect. Their photos are never taken down because the consumers of those images, which are for the most part male, are perfectly happy with those images. But if it's anything like, if you've seen Rupi Kaur's statement on Instagram, which was a photograph of a woman with a period stain, and that was hugely controversial because it was taken down because it wasn't, I guess, sexy enough for Instagram standards. At least that's how I see it. I mean, if a woman can't even feed her baby, or Miley Cyrus can't be topless on Instagram just for the sake of being topless, then who are the standards serving exactly?
And the only reason why I would think that logistically why there's a difference there is just because you're choosing whether or not you want to follow someone on Instagram. You're making an active choice on what you're seeing, whereas when you're outside walking about, what you're running into in the public is a little bit different. Not to say that I disagree in terms of the overall point there. I mean, it's a problem, it's problematic that we have a differentiation based on whether or not we're looking at a woman's body or a man's body, and how we decide what's okay for the public to see. Look, it's okay for, a guy to be dressed in just shorts or in whatever they're wearing, but women have to be more covered. Women have to be, there are parts that shouldn't be seen by everybody, regardless of what the woman wants. I don't know.
I think it's also especially harmful because it's so subjective, and with the example of breastfeeding in public, you've seen a lot of places where it's completely not acceptable and the women are told to go to the bathroom, but there's also places where it's like, oh, it's not a big deal, like just don't look if it makes you feel uncomfortable type of thing. And so it's like, it's hard to know what is not necessarily okay, but like what page we're on if there's not a consistent standard.
That's definitely interesting. So what would you want, I guess let's say you graduated, well, you're going to graduate. So you're graduating from University of Arizona. What do you want your legacy to be? Whether that's within the party girl culture or stereotypes, or just generally on campus?
I don't necessarily need to leave a footprint. I just don't want to fall into a standard that I don't want to represent myself as. I want to be able to have gone through college and have gone through these past 4 years and been like, I'm satisfied with how I represented myself, what I did for myself, and what I did for Hispanic girls specifically, I guess. Mm-hmm. That is my short-term goal. I want to be able to say, like, look, hey, you can do it too. I did it.
I think that's an awesome footprint to leave, frankly.
All right. Well, I think we've had a really good conversation today. Laila, you think we should wrap it up?
Yes. I am actually dealing with a kitten who was crawling all over me, so I apologize for being half engaged with the conversation. I'm usually a little bit more engaged, but this cat has the sharpest claws, so I was trying to keep as quiet as possible.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Kaitlin.
Thanks for having me. Also, if you guys ever want to have a new nickname for Shayan, call her Sean. It's my favorite. And she'll love it.
Is that, she's going to kill us if we call her Sean, or?
I mean, definitely. I got our whole class to call her it for a whole semester one time. I love it. It's like, I heard her mom call it, like, her mom used to always just say, like, oh, Sean, like, come do this. And I was like, so I started calling her it, obviously, because I'm part of the family, But yeah, you guys should do it.
That's a good note. There you go, Shayan. We're going to start calling you Sean. You're welcome. Thank you, Kaitlin.
Yes, I'm glad I made my contribution.
Wake up in the morning feeling like P. Diddy.
Hey, what up,
Grab
girl?
my glasses, I'm out the door. I'm gonna hit this city.
Let's go.
Before I leave, brush my teeth with a bottle of Jack. 'Cause when I leave for the night, I ain't coming back.
I think party girl culture is the best indicator of slut shaming in our society.
Even within feminists. And I also never really gave a lot of thought to the whole idea of fraternities being respected. Well, I understand that part, but sororities being seen as a haven for girls who want to get drunk, I honestly never really thought much past that.
I'm not sure you gave this thought beyond hating those girls who would supposedly cry for their grades.
It was a known fact.
Alright, Laila, whatever you say.
I think it's also interesting to mention how Kesha got a perfect SAT score or something like that, but she's hailed as the trashy party girl queen within music.
I never really understood the dollar sign in her name. It's like K $, Seems like that's how it's pronounced.
Oh my god, Najira, you're so lame. Lee made that joke like 7 years ago.
I'm being serious, alright? Not really making sense there.
Lining up, 'cause they hear we got swagger, but we kick 'em to the curb unless they look like Mick Jagger.
What are your thoughts? Tweet us at The Exposé Show or send us a message at theexposeshow.tumblr.com. You can join the many stalkers who've already started messaging us.
And make sure you're subscribed to us on iTunes so you never miss an episode.
In this episode, we heard TikTok by Kesha and Girls Just Wanna Have Fun by Cyndi Lauper. Follow our playlist on Spotify to keep up with the great music we feature.
Is this episode's music really great, though?
We've been over this, it's amazing. The Exposé is produced by Sidikha, Ashraf, Najira, Ahmed, and me, Laila. Shayan Farooq is the person that decides to move cross-country in the middle of the summer. You can find out more about the show at comingoffaith.com/podcast or theexposeshow.tumblr.com.
The Exposé is brought to you by Coming of Faith, a digital media venture amplifying the voices of minority women. You can share your episode ideas with us by emailing exposeshow@comingoffaith.com or tweeting us. See you next Wednesday.
The party don't start till I walk in. Don't stop.